Coupes. By definition, a vehicle with 2 doors and 4 seats meant for the connoisseurs who deemed the ordinary sedan too unsporty. Coupes were usually occupied by 2 people to GT from point A to point B in style and comfort, and if need be, you could marry that pedal with the floor and overtake those pesky road-hogging Sunday drivers in front of you. There are a lot of different brands and models that pop up in our minds if somebody talks about coupes in the 90s. In this episode, we're going to talk about the ones that don't pop up in your minds, those unsung heroes. The 90s, a time when weird-looking hairstyles were called cool. Techno music, a style kicked off by the likes of Kraftwerk, CJ Bolin and others, gained global popularity, and people dressed in the most ridiculous ways strapped electric household appliances to their backs and went to the then so-called raves. The car world in the 90s just recovered from the design dark ages of the 70s and 80s, and a lot of 2-doors started to emerge, most of them based on 4-door models and some even without any sedan brethren. Some of them were deservedly unsuccessful, others were just a victim of the formula wrong time, wrong place. Let's go with the first in our lineup. Number 1. The Audi S2 Coupe. Back in 1991, the Urquattro or S1 had terrorized slippery backroads since its launch 9 years earlier, and it set the standard for all four-wheel drive cars to come, smashed its way into the world rally scene and blew the doors wide open for every manufacturer to develop their own all-wheel drive systems. If Lucifer had to choose a car, it would have been this fire-breathing, road-munching monster, and he would be scared. In short, it was a phenomenon. Any car that came along to replace such a powerhouse of engineering was going to have the mother of all headaches filling its shoes. Just imagine a task replacing this. That car was the Audi S2. Based on the humble Audi 80 B3 platform, the sheet metal was a totally new development. The S2 featured the same 5-cylinder 20-valve turbo as its predecessor, pushing out a respectable 220 horsepower. Through a 5-speed gearbox, the S2 could accelerate to 60 in just under 6 seconds and featured virtually the same permanent 4x4 drivetrain and suspension setup as the Quattro that came before it. So the S2 was the Quattro replacement. Well, yes and no. Although on paper the figures were as good if not better than the Quattro, the new car was always going to be judged against something almost impossible for it to live up to. Road testers were more than happy to praise the S2's speed and road holding skills, but didn't like the use of the variable speed servotronic steering. The S2 was criticized for its slightly drab-slab-sided looks and its lack of driver involvement. Crucial things to get right on any car, but for the one whose name infers a continuation of the fire-spitting S1 badge, essential. In 1993, an updated version came on stream that ousted the unloved servotronic steering in favor of the conventional rack, an upgraded engine, 230 horsepower now, and a new close ratio 6-speed gearbox, though it did lose a switchable ABS of the earlier version. These changes went some way to improving the driver experience, but the S2 was never really seen as a completely worthy successor to its forebearer, even though it was far from flawed. By any other measure, this car was actually great. Yes, the Urquattro is still the one everybody knows about. It's the poster boy for retro 80s rally chic, helped in no small part by a certain Mr. Gene Hunt, but there was no great cry out when the Audi S2 was discontinued in 1995. Number 2. The Mitsubishi 3000 GT. It's the golden age for Japanese car manufacturers, and some serious dinero is now being made. Therefore, the Mitsubishi management did the sensible thing and set out to build the most advanced coupe, and all ideas were welcome. And I'm pretty sure that some of the entries into the spec sheet mention things like jet propulsion and nuclear reactors. Mitsubishi had something to prove to its competition and to the car enthusiast world, so they burned down a technology firework, and a bright one at that. The car was powered by a 3-liter V6 that was force-fed with 2 turbochargers, spitting out a respectable 304 horsepower in VR4 spec. The car had a rear spoiler that flipped up at certain speeds and a front lip that was lowered to improve airflow, and we were talking 90s people. Not enough tech? They added 4-wheel steering to improve handling and an electronically controlled suspension where you command the car to be hard for cornering or soft for touring, and a switch exhaust enabled you to scare neighbors at will. To round it off, just like a bow after gymnastics routine, they gave the car the coolest feature ever given to a car: pop-up headlights. Most of this technology would materialize in cars decades later. In Japan it was called the GTO, and that didn't pair well with other manufacturers where the GTO badge was firmly attached to the likes of Ferrari or Pontiac. So they settled on Mitsubishi 3000 GT that was also being built as a Dodge Stealth in the United States. All those electric goodies had one major drawback. They added kilos, and weight is detrimental to speed and acceleration. The Mitsubishi was pegged against a lot of European sports cars of its time and proved to be quick and sporty, and testers of the time raved about the responsiveness of the steering and the stable underpinnings controlled by the electronic suspension. Yet some of them argued that based on the numbers of the power plant, their expectations were a bit higher. Because of all the electronic wizardry, the reliability was suffering greatly, especially considering the fact that spare part prices, even while the 3000 GT was still in production, were astronomical. The replacement electric strut for the rear wing demanded the same money as a diamond ring, so when Mitsubishi tried to improve these issues by removing a lot of the features, the car became too expensive and the competition offered equal drives for less money, and the sales went south, until the production of the Mitsubishi 3000 GT ceased in 2000. Number 3. The Lancia Kappa Coupe. When Mother Fiat really couldn't think of anything else to say about its Lancia subsidiary, the Kappa was launched in 1993. An undefined four-door thing for the upper middle class that can do many things well and nothing in particular, and the people who bought it did so, presumably in memory of better times when Lancia was poor but sexy. Everything was allowed, nothing made money. A financial disaster, but cars to die for. The last surge came in 1996. The final act of self-dismantling was called the Kappa Coupe. The two-door car is different, exclusive, and a cruelly bad deal for its manufacturer, a real Lancia, more precisely, the last real Lancia. The Kappa has everything that makes Lancisti happy. There are 3 engines, none like the other. An inline 5-cylinder with 2.4 liters of displacement and 175 horsepower. Above that, the 3-liter V6 from the group's sister company Alfa Romeo, but Lancia only sells it with an automatic, and that killed the potential of the 204 horsepower right there. Shortly before the end, there's a 2-liter turbo with 4 cylinders and 220 horsepower, a result of the Italian luxury tax on large displacement engines. None of them change the essence of a Kappa Coupe. It's not an asphalt burner, but a classic Gran Turismo that does everything to disguise its saloon genes. In front, the Kappa Coupe snuffles low to the ground, a bit pudgy around the waist, and underneath, we have these wheels that peek out like 2 short legs. There's no question that the Carrozzeria Maggiore in Turin, which designed and built the Kappa Coupe, has produced better designs. Architects and culture vultures with a penchant for Italian design, on the other hand, are more than happy to take one. They're happy about the generous space, they ignore the nasty plastic wood in the cockpit, and they often treat themselves to leather upholstery from the luxury furniture manufacturer Poltrona Frau, who also, by the way, settles up for Ferrari. Oh yes, types like the Mercedes CLK and Peugeot 406 are considerably cheaper. Maggiora builds a meek 3,271 Kappa Coupes in 5 years. When the curtain falls on the series in 2000, the coach builder is bankrupt. Lancia is still ailing, only real Lancia no longer exists. Number 4. Rover 800 Coupe, or should I call it Sterling 800 Coupe. This car was built for a world that it never reached, and a situation that sadly never occurred, namely the rejuvenation of demand or a light rekindling of interest in Rovers in the United States. Though had it made it there, the 800 Coupe would have been badged as a Sterling rather than a Rover, the parent company choosing this name partly to avoid linking it to the randomly disintegrating Range Rovers out there, and also because the company risked being litigated against by ex-Rover dealers had it reintroduced the brand over there. And a relaunch was what the 800 Coupe was about, not so much of Rover but of Sterling, which despite being heavily based on the original Honda legend, managed to display the kind of hair-tearing electrical reliability that inspired all those American Lucas jokes. For the benefit of the young and unscarred, Lucas was a British firm that made many of the electrical components that caused British cars to malfunction endearingly by failing to start on a winter's night, or plunging their patience-stretched owners into total darkness, or demanding the application of a sharp hammer blow to the fuel pump to restore the gas supply. Which is how Lucas came to be known as the Prince of Darkness. And amazingly, or perhaps not, their Sterling had lots of these problems, and I won't even start with the engine. Turning on the air conditioner could make the headlights go dim, whilst thunderstorms might kill the electrical supply altogether. And then there were dashboards that warped and turned green in the desert sun, rear parcel shelves that bleached white, and alarms that triggered when dampened. These fine array of faults soon had American buyers reconfirming their unfavorable views of British cars. With a new lineup of debugged Sterling 800 saloons, a fastback version in a market that didn't buy hatches, as demonstrated by the failure of the Rover SD1, and this moderately handsome two-door coupe that was originally planned for the Americas only. But by the time it had been tooled up, Sterling had withdrawn from the United States, leaving Europe to take this curiosity instead. High-end versions were beautifully trimmed, the diluted thought the Bentley-like, and the later 2.0 turbo was impressively quick, exposing the flaws in the 800's compromised suspension to excellent effect. Also available was the same engine sans the turbo, ringing out a measly 136 horsepower. The top of the range model was a 2.7-liter V6 from Honda developing 169 horsepower. Although being a comfy, lightly stylish runabout, it was sadly a British failure. The plug was pulled on this experiment in 1999. Number 5. Ford Probe. The Ford Probe is a gloriously dreadful car. Take that statement in. An oxymoron? You bet it is. Like bad sex or healthy cake. However, it's having the last laugh if you want to get all anal about it. The Probe is one car that Ford would like to forget ever existed. A face-slappingly awful Japanese Ford combo that looks as weird and as plastic as anything featured in the 80s Doctor Who. Except this car isn't from a decade of shoulder pads. Don't let the pop-up headlights and the first production date of '88 fool you. This is as 1990 as the Macarena or Wave look. With a name like Probe, it's the blue oval at the front that saves it from mockery. This is the definition of irony, however, as the car itself is in fact a Mazda, and not one of Mazda's finest moments at that. There was a huge amount expected of the Probe when it was unveiled and thrust onto the market during 1992. The Capri has been a huge success and was already imprinted in time as a cult piece of engineering. Its replacement had the public foaming at the mouth with excitement, especially after Ford and Mazda had merged. Ford's people-pleasing styling mixed with incredible reliability created a deal that benefited everybody. Except it didn't last long. Ford cut ties with Mazda, but not before the Probe had enjoyed 5 rocky years on the European markets. Sales didn't hit anywhere near where Ford bigwigs had hoped, down to huge prices and questionable build quality. Panel gaps in certain models were large enough to fit your fist through. The ride was deemed harsh and legroom in the back was pitiful if you're over 5 years old. Looking like something out of a Barbie party pack, expensive, christened with a dubious name and offering the build quality of a shredded wheat. It was never going to be a big seller. Between 92 and 93 the Probe had numerous price reductions which proved that the original asking price was a pipe dream as large as the Hoover Dam. Its rivals were cheaper and offered a wide array of engines. However, for all the comments about the Probes, it's good fun. Most cars of character are monsters with jittery rides or ferocious fuel consumption or dreadful build quality or comedy handling or huge design flaws or truck-like driving experience or square looks. While the Probe certainly doesn't look square, it ticks a lot of the other boxes. Every small back road and every motorway is a fantastic experience thanks to the smooth 163 horsepower V6 or 128 horsepower straight 4. Paired with a neat gearbox and chuckable handling. And it's practical. Lack of rear legroom aside, the boot is a decent size and front passenger comfort is sublime. It'll fit your golf clubs and your kids, your dog, your weekly shopping and your wife all at the same time. So what's the verdict? Well, a mixed bag of brilliance and flaw didn't sell very well and was simply an MX6 with Ford badging. It has a scary number of design faults, but it's fun, cheap and practical. All of the things that Fords should be. Number 6. Subaru SVX. Look up the word unconventional in the dictionary and you'll come up with words like eccentric, avant-garde and quirky. All adjectives which were used to describe Subaru's distinctly off-beam SVX model. What's so odd about the SVX? How long do you got? Rather than follow any defined automotive genre, the SVX blazed its own trail. Unfortunately, this trail ended up in something of a box canyon, but for a few years the SVX was probably one of the most outlandish cars you could buy. A show car that somehow escaped onto the road. When the SVX was released in 1992, few realized quite what it was. It was certainly expensive, its price elevated it into the hunting grounds of some accomplished machinery, and the two-door body shape led some magazines to compare it with the likes of the Porsche 968 and the Mazda RX-7, but they, like most who contemplated this car, were barking up the wrong tree. The nearest contemporary may well be something like a Renault Aventime, something that struggles to fit into a defined niche. Although it casts a fair-sized footprint on the road, space inside the Subaru SVX is limited to 2+2 seating at best. The 3.3-liter 24-valve flat-6 engine drives all 4 wheels in the finest Subaru tradition and is at once the car's heart and finest asset and also its biggest liability. It's an incredibly complex engine featuring Iris, Subaru's variable intake system, and 4 overhead cams operating 4 valves per cylinder. It's almost as if Subaru's engineers set out about showing off what they could do, in much the same way that Mariah Carey never uses one note when 15 are possible. Based on a design by Giugiaro, its signature styling features is a striking glass house with unusual windows within windows at each side. Subaru claimed these allowed the windows to be lowered without wind buffeting at speeds of up to 75 miles per hour, but seeing as the SVX was fitted with air conditioning, there seemed little point. The dev still harked from the days when Japanese cars hadn't quite cracked the code of making plastic look classy, but the rest of the cabin is well finished in leather and Alcantara, with dramatic looking sports seats that were surprisingly comfortable. The SVX is no ball of fire, but neither does it hang around. The power output of the 226 horsepower rarely overwhelms the traction, although it's enough to propel this 1,614 kg car to 60 in 8.7 seconds on the way to 144 miles per hour. figures which compare favorably with modern cars such as the Peugeot 406 Coupe. Has such a great car ever been such a sales turkey? When Autocar tested this car upon launch, they rated it above the Audi S2, the Honda Legend Coupe, the Jaguar XJS 4.0, the Mitsubishi 3000 GT and the Nissan 300ZX. That's some achievement. Sales of the SVX never got much beyond a trickle, and only one trim level was available. This model received a minor revision in April '93 with the addition of a driver's airbag, heated door mirrors and infrared-coated door locking, but the steep price and a wall of public apathy meant that the writing was soon on the wall for the Subaru's wacky Super Coupe. September 1996 saw the car quietly withdrawn from sale, with few lamenting its passing. Number 7. The Mazda MX6. The Mazda MX6 appears to generate very little interest in the petrolhead world, which is strange as the car doesn't do anything particularly bad. In fact, it performs in most areas with aplomb, yet it never received the acclaim of its brotherly MX-5 and sadly died young. On sale for a brief 6 years in a crowded market, flashy competitors drowned out the humble MX-6's presence. Some of its critics claim that Mazda designers ironed out every piece of character out of the body. Rivals ruled the roost and the MX-6 quietly came and went between 1992 and 1998. Even the Fiat Coupe, with its appalling high reported breakdown rate, achieved higher sales figures worldwide. Its natural rivals, the likes of the Toyota Celica and the Ford Probe, have since gone and became hugely popular with time, while the MX-6 has been relegated to a mere asterisk in Mazda's vast history. The Mazda was a reminder that growing up didn't necessarily mean reaching for the saloon or the 4x4. The engine may not have been the most powerful or the most charismatic V6 in the world when launched, but it allowed easy and comfortable cruising paired with brutal punch when requested. The engine complements the car perfectly, modest, sophisticated, and very much capable of quietly battering its rivals. Fun could still be had in coupe form and with impeccable reliability. The main problem, besides a rather complex electrical system, was the cheap feeling from almost everything to hand. The seats felt rigid and gave the reassuring feedback of a beer bench. The steering wheel and the gear stick felt like what they were, cheap plastic. And the pedals were lightweight and too small, you had to use your toes to operate them. A sin, as some extra capital pumped into the interior components could have made for a more favorable impression. Don't let the interior put you off though. Floor the accelerator and hit the road or gently glide from A to B, the Mazda will serve you with no hiccups. The engine can fool you into thinking it's a larger unit with a healthy dollop of high-end power and low-down grunt. Bumps and potholes are absorbed with ease through the strut suspension setup. The same setup allows a firm ride without the lower back-breaking stiffness associated with other sporting coupes. The Probe V6 may be similar mechanically with a higher approval rating for its looks, but it was the Mazda that gave you thousands of miles worth of trouble-free motoring. Number 8. The Fiat Coupe. After the decline in the 1970s, Fiat concentrated back on building bread-and-butter cheap cars in the whole 1980s. By the turn of the decade, Fiat was back on track and wanted to bring more interesting products. This resulted in the Coupe. From 1994 to 2000, Fiat sold 72,698 units of the Coupe. All were built by Pininfarina in its Turin factory using Fiat components. Thanks to the Pininfarina signature badge, a dramatic design and strong performance, the Coupe was usually referred to as the poor man's Ferrari. However, the Coupe was actually designed by Fiat's Centro Stile. Pininfarina was only responsible for the interior design and production. Its unusual appearance with double bubble headlamp covers, short tail, muscular fenders, and signature grooves over the wheel arches was conceived by Fiat's rising American designer, Chris Bangle. His original drawings showed an even weirder design, but luckily it was toned down by his boss, Nevio De Giusto, and became the production car we later saw. When the Coupe was unveiled to the public in 1993, it raised many eyebrows due to its unusual shape, even though the production car was already much more digestible to the eyes than Bangle's original sketches. Nevertheless, it was abundant of classical design details, such as the Ferrari-style quad circular taillights, the exposed polished filler cap, and a classy clamshell bonnet. Comparatively, the Pininfarina design interior was well received right from the beginning. The cabin was bigger than you would imagine. Despite of a short wheelbase, it provided decent space for 4 average-sized people. The Coupe's chassis was built on a modified Tipo 2 platform, employing McPherson struts as front suspensions and trailing arms as rear suspensions. Its handling was generally good, with limited body roll, plenty of grip, excellent brakes, and fine steering feedback, but the combination of a powerful turbocharged engine and a front-wheel drive chassis resulted in the magical disappearance of your front tires. Nevertheless, what it lacked in handling was compensated in performance. In the beginning, the Coupe offered 2 engines, 142 horsepower 2-liter 16-valve and 195 horsepower 2-liter 16-valve turbo. The former was taken straight from the Tipo, and the latter was adapted from the Lancia Delta Integrale, but both of them were the last evolutions of the long-serving Lampredi twin cam. The Coupe Turbo was especially impressive. It topped 140 miles per hour, did 0 to 60 in only 6.8 seconds, and was one of Europe's fastest coupes. However, even better things came 2 years later after its launch. In 1996, both 4-pot engines were replaced by Fiat's new Superfire 2.0 inline 5-cylinder engine with aluminum block and variable intake valve timing. The normally aspirated version produced 147 horsepower, which were later increased to 155, while the turbocharged version surged to 220 horses. The body was zinc-plated to fight rust and to stop the negative gossip attached to other Italian cars of being water-soluble. Although the coupe couldn't outrun all the demons that plagued other Italian cars, like providing electricity at the right spot at the right time. Breakdowns due to electrical problems were numerous, but fans loved it anyway. Such storming performance strengthened its image as a poor man's Ferrari. Number 9. Honda Legend Coupe. At a time when big coupes were en vogue, the Legend two-door was suspected to be Japan's answer to the things like the Mercedes-Benz SEC. A statement of luxury, so much so it was sold under the Acura brand name in North America to differentiate it from the average Honda. But the concept of big brassy two-door sort of faltered somewhere along the line, and the Legend Coupe, though it stayed on the market, took a stumble along with it. But if anything, the first update of the concept that arrived in 1991 was even bigger and brassier than ever before. The sleek lines of the first generation car were completely lost on the new car that took on a more imposing look with big chunky flanks and blistered wheel arches. It was bigger in every dimension too, weighed in at 1,560 kilograms and was almost 5 meters long, although the wheelbase was 80 millimeters shy of the Legend sedans. But while it might have been bigger, it was also a more conservative styling statement, especially in the silvers and grays that most owners chose. But even that couldn't stop Honda using its flagship two-door to demonstrate to the world the brilliance of its engineers. Honda is, after all, a company founded on engineering innovation, so when it came time to redo the Legend, and therefore the coupe, the engineers were let loose. The Legend stayed with front-wheel drive. The V6 engine was also all new again. The engineers really went to town. Everything received more girth, so engine capacity was increased to 3.2 liters up from 2.7. The engine used 4 valves per cylinder and retained its single overhead camshaft layout, just as Honda had been doing with the 4-cylinder Civic range for years. A variable length inlet track was also part of the deal, as well as Honda's patented programmed fuel injection. The Legend Coupe also got direct ignition. All up, the engine added 195 horsepower and 280 Nm of torque. The Legend Coupe was suspended pretty softly, and the feedback from the steering wheel is the same you get from talking to a brick wall. Despite the fact that this model was the first to be fitted with speed-sensitive power assistance. The plus side was that the big coupe was a comfortable way to get around with low interior noise levels and excellent ride quality. And while it was hardly a hot rod in straight-line terms, it gave the sort of effortless performance on which luxury cars built their reputation. And that's the point. The Legend Coupe was far more luxury lounge and sports car, no matter what the two-door layout may have suggested. The coupe was removed from the world markets in 1996. Number 10. Porsche 968. The roots of the Porsche 968 trace back to a skinny, underpowered, can't-pull-the-skin of a rice-pudding sports coupe filled with Volkswagen parts. In 1975, Porsche released the Porsche 924, a front-engine transaxle coupe actually developed for Volkswagen. Reason being that, hold on to your panties, Porsche believed the times of the 911 were over. The die-hard Porsche community yelled blasphemy every time they saw a 924 or called it the bricklayer's Porsche and a myriad of other very unfavorable names. When the sales of the pretty successful 924 trickled down, Porsche had to act. Remember the formula Honda used on the Legend? Porsche gave the new car more of everything, mainly width. The 944 was born. When the 944 started to show its age, Porsche was stuck in a situation they knew very well: great ambitions coupled with empty pockets. So the successor of the 944 was a mere evolution than a revolution, and was given the random name 968. So it's no wonder that the 968 can't hide its relationship to the 944, yet still with the meager funds and great ideas, the Porsche engineers took great inspiration from the 928's front and did some Hollywood surgery in the rear. The interior was almost untouched, yet a lot of engineers from Zuffenhausen say to this day that the build quality of the 968 was the best to ever leave the factory. However, the biggest party trick, the metal evidence of the ingenuity of Porsche's engine department, the 4-cylinder firebox was given a thorough once or twice over. The crankshaft rod and piston assembly were completely new. The air intake was redesigned, so was the engine management system. The biggest and most important change is the introduction of the VarioCam system, Porsche's variable intake cam timing. This resulted in 240 horsepower and 305 Nm of torque. That made this powerplant the highest torquing naturally aspirated 3-liter engine in the world. The ride in the Porsche is unworldly good-mannered. The car is stable, the steering has the precision of a Swiss clock. No unexpected outbursts of under or oversteering, just a fantastic road-keeping car. Maybe that was the reason for the early demise of the 968. Maybe it was too mannered, too unspectacular for the Porsche crowd. It was possibly the sheer amount of understatement that lastly sealed the fate of the Porsche 968. Although at least for a certain period the 968 was selling like filled water jugs in a drought, it was discontinued in 1996. I'm robinyuga. If you liked what you saw, consider subscribing. Bye.